Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Let's Play Sins of a Solar Empire Part 10. As always, my name is eckohour, and I will be the disembodied voice hosting this Let's Play. So, in the previous episode, we defeated the Rollus Sobare, as you may or may not recall. What we're seeing right now is me engaging the remainder of the Rollus Sobare forces above their capital planet. They didn't have much in the way of forces. They had about 3 capital ships and a handful of frigates. Nothing that we couldn't handle. We in turn had 3 carriers and then a large force of carrier cruisers to combat them. We definitely outnumbered them, but they did give us a fight for our money, and we did lose a couple ships in the process. Nothing important. None of our capital ships were lost. One did come close to dying. As you can see right now, the 3rd aircraft carrier down there at the bottom left is already taking significant damage, but I do some tricks, pull him back, and start to get him healed before they can kill him off. What we also remember from the previous episode is that I did the entire audio in post-production. It was not a live audio, it was post-audio, just like what I'm doing right now. And I'm going to be full disclosure about that. The reason for that was what I had set my recorder to do was, and this was my fault entirely, I had set my video recorder to record on 2 separate audio tracks, but not separated from the video file. So whenever I tried to import the video file, it was only looking for 1 audio track, and so it would, it would only have the in-game audio. Shouldn't be a problem after that, because now I have the audio tracks exporting separately, and they should be able to be imported just fine. But for now, this previous episode and this episode are both having to be recorded in post. So I apologize. I know that I'm not going to be able to give you the stream of consciousness. So I'm going to try and keep it a little more open-ended than my normal talks. And in episode 11, and for episode 3 of the Star Wars Empire at War Let's Play, which is going to be released after this episode, it'll be back to live commentary. If you guys really don't like this, I'm sorry. There's not really anything I can do about it. It is what it is. I already recorded these, and I was kind of stuck with what it is. I'm a new Let's Player. I knew I was going to make some mistakes starting out, so that's all I can do is be transparent with you guys and apologize. I'm not going to try and cover it up by pretending like I'm giving you guys a stream of consciousness in this part of the episode, just because I feel like I'm not going to insult your guys' intelligence. I mean, you can kind of tell that I'm not really talking. I mean, look at me. I'm zooming in, I'm zooming out. I do that every episode. What am I thinking? I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking half the time, and I'm sure you guys don't. So if I'm not telling it to you right then and there, it can become confusing. So what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to go over some of the game concepts with you guys. But first, I'm going to cut away, and the reason being is because I was focusing on fleet production, but while I was focusing on fleet production, something happened. So you guys are going to get a little treat about a minute long, so enjoy. And we're back. Alright, I apologize for that. That was my pathetic attempt for humor. But what we see right now is my 2 star bases on the other end of the wormhole. This is not the end of the wormhole in my star system. This is the opposing star system. But right now, the Slave Car Magistra decided that they were going to make a play against my double upgraded star bases. So they threw about 6 to 7 capital ships, including a Titan, at my 2 star bases. And so what we're going to be hearing in the background of this narration is we're going to be seeing this whole big combat between this fleet and my star bases. And this really demonstrates just how strong a double star base can be, which is one of the reasons why I really like a Well, I really like the Loyalists for the TEC. They are the only faction that get to build extra star bases for their planets. It kind of plays into the whole concept that the TEC were starting to really dig in to stave off the advance of the Visari and the Advent. It also plays into just how strong pre-strategy is, which is something I talked about in the previous episode. What you saw in the little goofy compilation that I made was a pirate raid on one of my planets. And just like in the previous episode, all those defenses were set up by themselves, and the pirates just kind of, especially with the pirates, you can just kind of set up your defenses as long as you have a pretty maximized defense. Like if you use all of the available tactical slots on your planet, you're gonna keep them from doing any significant damage. They might raid some of your trade lines, but as long as you build correctly, you're gonna keep them from really wreaking any significant damage. So what we see right here is my 2 star bases. They are primarily combat spec, which means I have max upgrades in weapons and armor for them. I think both of them also have a trade tick and a repair tick, so they're able to repair one another, which means they're really able to outlast. Now these 2 things can do a lot of damage, and as you can see, one of the first things we actually kill is I focus them on the Titan, and there you see it blowing up in the background there. So 2 star bases alone, they don't seem like that much, but they're able to take not only a regular fleet, but a regular fleet and a Titan and win. Now granted, that was a level 1 Titan against 2 fully upgraded star bases. A well upgraded Titan probably would be a different story. It would have better armor, better weapons, and abilities that would actually be able to supplement it, but that was a level 1. Most of these capital ships here that were fighting me were all level 1 too, so there was a bit of a disadvantage in investment. One of my previous episodes, a commenter asked about how trade works in this game, and I realized I kind of skimmed over it. There are 2 kind of aspects to trade in this game, and it's the same for whatever faction you play as. There are the trade hubs, which are kind of your automated trade network. When you put down a trade hub, that trade hub automatically builds trade ships. It works the same for refineries. Refinery automatically builds refinement ships. And those ships will fly around to wherever it is that they need to go to, and they will start to pick up credits and crystal or metal for you and distribute that evenly throughout your empire. So once you build a trade hub, there's not really anything you need to do other than build trade hubs on other planets. The more planets you have, the longer your trade network is, the more money you're going to generate. So a large empire is going to benefit a lot from trade, which is what you're going to need to cover all the expenses that is going to go into maintaining the empire. So especially with the TEC, you're going to make good money off of trade, and you can also invest in research upgrades to kind of help you get an edge in the black market, which means all the credits that you have can be used to buy metal and crystal. Also, what we saw in the background was one of my star bases blowing up. So they were able to focus on one, but by the time that they started focusing on the other one, they only had a couple capital ships left, and it wasn't enough, and it won't be enough to take it out. It was a close fight. My capital ship got down to the wire with one other capital ship that, for whatever reason, just didn't die. But in the end, my starbase emerged victorious. The other form of trade that you may or may not have noticed is when you go into the diplomacy screen, and that's in the top where you see the little shaking hands, you can exchange crystal, metal, and credits directly with opposing factions, and you don't need to be friends or enemies or whatever sort of relation with them to do so. You can do it at any point in time, and doing so does give you a bonus in how they view you. It doesn't influence how your faction views them, but it does influence how their faction views you. In turn, you can also give them missions once you do the proper research for it to give you credits or metal or crystal, which I've used a couple times. And if they agree to do that, then your faction gains a point bonus in how it views that faction. There's a few other concepts. Again, refineries work the same way that trade does. You, as a rule, kind of want to build refineries on planets with a heavy amount of crystal. So ice planets, especially the ones that have 4 crystal depots, you're going to want to build refineries on. volcanic planets that have multiple metal refineries, or multiple metal extractors you're gonna want to build refineries on. And refineries don't just stay limited to the one system that they're in. They will travel to other other nearby planets, and mine those particular extractors. So, again, you don't. It's this game versus other RTSs is less about the micromanagement and more about the macro management, how you handle the big picture. So the fact that you decided to invest in several trade networks along a series of planets versus I want to specifically send these caravans here and there, it's more about you made the decision to build the trade network and start investing in money in the long run. The downside about trade is, especially early on, it's expensive. It's like 950 or 700 and some credits on top of the metal and crystal it is to build a trade depot. That's something that can be spent on like 4 or 5 frigates. So it is a gamble. You are saying that I'm investing more in the long run, but in the long run, it definitely pays more than enough for itself. I think it makes about each one makes about 3 credits a second. So, what is that? For 900, that's about 300 seconds, I think. My math's probably terrible. But 3 credits a second. So, in 300 seconds, so roughly about 5-6 minutes, you will have generated enough credits to build another trade network. And the more you build, the more that snowballs. So, I mean, you look at my credit income right now, I've got 76,000 credits, and that's mostly from my trade. Especially with the TEC, the more you invest in trade, the more it's going to start to eclipse the amount of money that you make from actual taxes. Even though you might have the population all of your planets maxed out, which that's what governs how much taxes you make from the planet. You invest in the TIC that makes it the same research that you do on a planet to make sure that it's not costing you money. If you max that out, that'll set up the population to maximize itself. And once it hits like max, that reaches the extent of the credits you're going to get from that planet. Also, loyalty and allegiance of that planet will affect the credit income as well. But that's getting into the more complex min-maxing kind of thing. Really, as a rule of thumb, if you want to max out your credit income on that planet, just invest in, for one, invest in trade, and 2, invest in the population you have on that planet. So, what really got me into Sins of a Solar Empire? As I said, it was a lot more slower paced, which is more my kind of speed. I like the slow, plodding, methodical, thought to a strategy game. I had been playing games like Civilization for a long time. I've been playing that ever since Civ 3, really. Civilization 3 was about when I started getting into the whole 4X kind of scheme. And then I played Civ 4 a lot. And so I believe at the time when I kind of stumbled across Sins of a Solar Empire, I was looking for a good space combat game. The reason being because I had heard a lot of good things about Homeworld 2, which anybody who's a big computer fan, a big RTS fan, almost everybody that's my age has nostalgic memories about Homeworld 2. I had been trying to get it to work on my computer off of my copy, and I wasn't able to, and I was really bummed about that. I also tried to get another space game that I was into at the time. What was it called? Star Trek Armada, I think? Star Trek Armada 1 and 2, which is another game that I played a little bit as a kid and enjoyed, despite it had many, many problems. Very buggy and very exploitable, but I enjoyed it because I was a big Star Trek nerd. So I had a bunch of games that I wanted to have big space battles in, I just couldn't do it. So I wandered into my local GameStop, and I found this beaten up box copy of the original Sins of a Solar Empire. It was just, I don't know if it got like mishandled during packaging, or the box that it was in just kind of got roughed up during transport. It wasn't used, it was new, but it was all kind of beat up, and I wasn't too sure about it. I never really heard anything about it at the time, but I saw a bunch of ships shooting lasers, and it talked about like going able to do other planet things and all this other craziness, and so I picked it up. And while it was installing, I was looking at videos on YouTube. It had only been out very briefly. As a matter of fact, I recalled seeing some ads for it in my Game Informer. And when I started seeing these ads, I was like, oh wow, this is really cool, look at all these ships going in. I like games where they program the voice actors to actually comment on what's going on. So when you're in a combat and you have other fleets coming in, it'll be like a allied fleet has arrived to help, and you know, an enemy fleet has arrived, and you know, we've lost a capital ship. All that kind of update, that feedback that makes it a little more immersive. It's kind of become more of a mainstay of RTSs nowadays. But at the time, it was still kind of, especially when this game first came out, it was still kind of a relatively new thing. There was only the occasional game that I would have that would do that, other than the common unit lost. But I just really started getting into it. I got really addicted to it, and stuff like that. There we go. The starbase just blew up the capital ship in the background. And wait a minute. Wait, what's that? Oh, those pesky pirates just won't leave us alone. So the pirates just kept attacking me while I was going off and trying to focus on building fleets and building star bases. But in the end, it paid off. So what we're about to see here is my various fleets. So this is basically the main fleet that you saw taking on the role of Solbare. I kind of joined them all together. I separated the carriers from them. Here we see the main fleet that I built. This was the fleet that was building all the while my star bases were being attacked. We have about 4 capital ships, 2 main battleships, 1 support one, and 1 that's meant for taking over other ships. This is our carrier fleet. It's going to jump in last. We want to keep it kind of to the rear because it's not meant for taking damage. And then finally, if I ever click over to it, there we go. There's my supplementary fleet. It was a fleet building at other shipyards on another planet. This is going to be mostly cruisers and frigates. It's going to be joined to this meager Fleet 1. And our target is this pirate base. I decided it was time for the last remaining resistance on my star system to go extinct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in all of my fleets, and you guys are going to get to watch, for the first time, some actual big fleet combat. I mean, I guess you kind of had that with the 2 star bases, but I mean, that wasn't me attacking anybody, and it was just kind of 2 sedentary star bases getting whomped on, and or vice versa, the fleets getting their butts handed to them by just 2 inanimate objects. Anyway, I really like Sins. It's always kind of been a favorite of mine. I've loved every expansion that they released with it. The first game had its problems. It had a really, really bare-bones diplomacy aspect. Even more bare-bones than the diplomacy you see now, if that can be believed. And they made it better. Before, you weren't able to give quests to the other teams. They would just give you quests, and if you didn't do them, they wouldn't like you, and if you did do them, they would like you, and it was kind of... The quests would sometimes be really easy, like, hey, just give me 200 credits, or they'd be really hard, like, go kill 15 enemy base buildings. It's like, how am I supposed to do that in 15 minutes without any sort of forces? So there's my first fleet jumping in. My carrier fleet will jump in last, and the main battle fleet will be jumping in next. There they go. They're all jumping in at the top of the screen there. So the first one was diplomacy, or no, I'm sorry. The first one was the entrenchment, which was what first introduced the star bases, and that was pretty much it. Entrenchment really didn't have much. It had the star bases. It had some tweaks to the different stats for your defensive structures, and it also introduced the starbase busting ship, I believe, for the specific cruiser that's meant to blow up bases really easily, which is really what you need to pop a upgraded starbase effectively. Then there was diplomacy, which definitely overhauled the diplomacy aspect and into what you see now. It also introduced the concept of sending envoys to people and all that kind of stuff. And the most recent one is this expansion pack, which really did a lot. Graphically, it overhauled everything. This game looks a lot better now than it did in the original release, just a lot better textures, a lot better shading, a lot better particle effects, all sorts of good stuff to make it look pretty. It also introduced, obviously, and I covered this in the first episode, I believe, but I'm just going to go over it again. Introduced the Titan. It introduced a new capital ship for every race. It introduced a new frigate called the Corvette for every race. It introduced separating factions, so each faction has loyalists and separatists, and as if the idea was that every faction was starting to implode on itself as the war just drew on and on. I think it's supposedly taken 20 to 30 years this war has been going on, so a long time for a big interstellar war. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just wiping out the pirates. The reason being is the reason all those pirate attacks that we saw in this episode were happening was because one of the, I don't know who, but one of, probably the Slave Car Magistrate since they were attacking my starbase, but one of the opposing factions started dumping a lot of credits on me. And so in retaliation, I did a twofold thing. One, I dumped a lot of credits on the Slave Car Magistra, so right now you see they still have 12,000 credits on their head. I also decided, you know what, I'm going to keep they can dump all the money they want to on me. I'm going to take the pirate base, and then all of that credit investment is going to be for naught, because the second this pirate base is gone, I don't even think the pirate bases will jump through a wormhole. I don't know, I could be wrong, we'll see, or maybe not, because I may not ever let them get to the point where they'll start attacking me again. It's not that I fear the pirates, they're just annoying, man. I don't want to keep hearing that pirates are attacking me or jumping around. I don't need them here anymore. There's no other faction that's going to oppose me, so there's no reason for them to stick around. And a little fun fact, fun Easter egg, every pirate base has an artifact on it. Without fail, if you capture a pirate base, if you invest the time and resources and ships, and I do lose a lot of ships during this fight, including one of my main battleships from my recently built fleet. If you do take a pirate base, they always have a powerful artifact on them if you research that. Other than that, they are virtually a dead asteroid with fancy little pyres and stuff on it. But beyond that, they are just a dead asteroid. So that's my thoughts on Sins. I realized I kind of rambled. This wasn't very substantive of an episode. I'm sorry. Hopefully by the next no, there we go. The Slave Car, I forgot about that. The Slave Car Magistrate decided to attack my starbases again. I built another one. I sent another Titan at it. So my resolution was, okay, I wiped up the starbase, and by the time episode 11 begins, we're gonna make them pay for the servicemen's lives that they stole on those starbases. And Slave Car Magistrate, with these two raids on my starbases, have painted a giant target on their backs. So I hope that they like the smell of rockets and lasers and other devious explosions in the background, because they are going to start feeling it. And Trade Coalition is starting to gain some steam. They took a couple other planets. I'm going to start building a couple super weapons and bombard planets between them and me so that they can start expanding out and cover my rear. But I think that's going to be it. Anyways, I want to thank all you guys for watching. This has been episode 10. Please stay tuned for episode 11 and the return of live commentary. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you later.